The Wild West was a time of lawless, where men were judged not by their morality but by their ability to wield a gun. Amidst the rampant violence and disorder of that time, few names evoked fear and respect like Curly Bill Brocius. An outlaw notorious for brutality, Brocius was a force to be reckoned with. He was the outlaw leader of the Clanton Gang, who terrorized Arizona in the late 1800s. In this video, we'll explore the life and crimes of Curly Bill Brocius, while trying to separate fact from fiction in this deadly gunman legend.
William Brocius, better known as Curly Bill Brocius, was an American gunman, rustler, and an outlaw cowboy in the Cochise County area of the Arizona Territory during the late 1870s and early 1880s. Brocius arrived in Arizona Territory from either Texas or Missouri about 1878. Before setting foot in the Arizona Territory, he briefly visited the San Carlos Reservation while herding cattle. Brocius was an outlaw cowboy and a rustler. Interestingly, for a period, he also assumed the role of a tax collector for Cochise County Sheriff Johnny Bahan. In this capacity, Brocius compelled other rustlers to pay taxes on their ill-gotten cattle, with the proceeds finding their way into the sheriff's treasury and augmenting his income. Brocius was described by contemporary author Billy Breckenridge in his book El Dorado, Bringing the Law to the Mesquite, as being the most deadly pistol shot of the cowboys. Able to hit running jackrabbits, shoot out candle flames without breaking the candles or lantern holders, and shoot quarters from between the fingers of volunteers. When drunk, Brocius was also known for a mean sense of humor and for such practical jokes as using gunfire to make a preacher dance during a sermon, or forcing Mexicans at a community dance to take off their clothes and dance naked. Both incidents were reported by Wells Fargo agent Fred Dodge in his memoirs, and are also referenced in newspapers from the era. In the Birdcage Theater Museum in Tombstone, there is a photograph of Brocius that lacks authentication. Additionally, 2 other unverified images of Brocius have been provided by his descendants. Several writers who knew Brocius described him as a well-built individual with curly black hair and a freckled complexion. On the evening of October 28, 1880, during a drunken revelry, several of Curly Bill's friends fired their pistols into the air in a dimly lit vacant area situated between Toughnut and Allen Streets, near the present-day location of the Birdcage Theater. Tombstone's town marshal, Fred White, endeavored to disarm Brocius and grabbed his weapon by the barrel. Tragically, the gun discharged, striking White in the groin. Wyatt Earp had borrowed Fred Dodge's pistol, and he pistol-whipped Brocius. During the subsequent preliminary hearing for Brocius, Wyatt testified that he had heard White say, "I am an officer. Give me your pistol." As White approached, he witnessed Brocius drawing his pistol from its holster, and White grab it by the barrel. Wyatt said he put his arms around Brocius from behind to see if he had any other weapons, and White gave a quick jerk and the pistol went off. White fell to the ground, wounded. When the pistol discharged, Wyatt buffaloed Brocius and arrested him. Brocius complained, "What have I done? I have not done anything to be arrested for." White was carried to a doctor, and they initially thought he would recover, and the next day, he gave a statement that exonerated Curly Bill of murder. However, that night, White's condition took a turn for the worse. Brocius later claimed that his gun discharged accidentally and reportedly immediately regretted shooting White. During his trial, Brocius testified that he did not view his actions as criminal. Fearing a potential lynching, Brocius voluntarily waived his right to a preliminary hearing. This decision was influenced by White's popularity as the town marshal, and Brocius was keen to leave town. Pima County Deputy Sheriff Earp and George Collins promptly transported Brocius to Tucson for his trial. Unfortunately, White passed away 2 days after being shot. In his final moments, White testified that he thought the pistol had accidentally discharged, and that he did not believe that Curly Bill shot him on purpose. Wyatt Earp supported this testimony, as did a demonstration that Brocius's pistol could be fired from half-cock, and the fact that it had been found to contain 6 rounds, with only one of them fired. After spending most of November and December 1880 in jail awaiting trial, Brocius was acquitted with a verdict of accidental death. Wyatt later disclosed to his biographer John H. Flood, Jr., many years later that he believed Brocius was armed at the time and did not notice that Brocius's pistol lay on the ground in the dark, until Brocius was already down. Despite being responsible for the deaths of several other men during his life, Brocius had apparently personally liked White, and consistently asserted that his death had been a tragic accident. Outlaw Cowboy. On March 8, 1881, Brocius and his friend Johnny Ringo rode to Maxey, near Camp Thomas, Arizona. Cowboy Dick Lloyd got drunk while playing poker in O'Neill and Franklin's saloon. After shooting and wounding one man, Lloyd rode his horse into the saloon where Brocius was drinking. Brocius and several other men resented the interruption, and about a dozen of them, including Brocius, shot Lloyd. Owner O'Neill took the blame and was acquitted. On May 25, 1881, Brocius was drinking heavily in Galeyville, accompanied by his friend Jim Wallace, a seasoned veteran of the Lincoln County War, and several other cowboys. Trouble brewed when Wallace insulted Brocius's comrade, Deputy Marshal Billy Breckinridge of Tombstone. Breckinridge ignored him, but Brocius took offense and insisted that Wallace accompany him and apologize to Breckinridge. Although Wallace complied, Brocius continued to berate him. Subsequently, Wallace left the saloon, and Curly Bill pursued him. Feeling threatened, Wallace fired a shot, striking Curly Bill in the cheek and neck. Deputy Breckinridge intervened and apprehended Wallace, but the court ultimately determined that Wallace had acted in self-defense. In July 1881, an incident unfolded when Bill Leonard and Harry Head attempted to rob the general store of William and Isaac Hazlitt in Hacatah, New Mexico. The Hazlitt brothers shot Leonard and Head during their captivity. Some modern researchers state that Brocius and friend Johnny Ringo rode to New Mexico to avenge their friends' deaths. However, no eyewitnesses could be located to corroborate these events or to establish Curly Bill's direct involvement in the Hazlitt's demise. 4 months after Brocius was shot, on October 6, 1881, George Parsons, as part of an Indian scouting party, rode through the McClory Brothers Ranch in Sulphur Springs Valley. He noted that Brocius had not completely recuperated from his injury but was well enough to ride. For this reason, many historians suspect that Brocius was involved in the Hazlitt's deaths. In July, some reports say that Brocius ambushed a Mexican trail herd in the Skeleton Canyon Massacre. In this grim event, 6 vaqueros lost their lives, while the surviving members were taken captive, possibly subjected to torture, and ultimately met their demise. Allegedly, Curly Bill proceeded to sell the pilfered Mexican beef to Newman Haynes Clanton in the subsequent month. Tragically, when Old Man Clanton and 4 others were herding the stolen beef along the trail to Tombstone, they fell victim to an ambush in what is now referred to as the Guadalupe Canyon Massacre, resulting in their deaths at the hands of Mexican assailants. However, no credible reports have confirmed Curly Bill's direct involvement in these incidents. Brocius was still recovering from being shot in the face by Wallace only 6 weeks earlier. Some modern researchers doubt that he was well enough to take part in these events. Assassination of Morgan Her. Subsequent to the gunfight at the OK Corral on October 26, 1881, Brocius robbed the Tombstone, Bisbee stagecoach on January 6, 1882, and the Tombstone, Benson stage the next day. In response, Deputy U.S. Marshal Wyatt Earp organized a posse to pursue the culprits, but their search in the Chiricahua Mountains proved fruitless. Brocius reappeared in Tombstone on March 17th. He was implicated by Marietta Duarte, the wife of Pete Spence, as a participant in the assassination of Morgan Earp. However, Justice of the Peace Wells Spicer rejected her testimony on the grounds of it being hearsay and because she could not testify against her husband. Lacking concrete evidence, The prosecution dropped all charges against the Cowboys. On March 20th, 1882, Deputy U.S. Marshal Wyatt Earp shot outlaw cowboy Frank Stillwell in Tucson while guarding his brother Virgil, who was en route to California. Death at Iron Springs. On March 24, 1882, the Earp party was expecting to meet Charlie Smith at Iron Springs, later Mescal Springs in the Whetstone Mountains. Smith was bringing cash from Tombstone about 20 miles to the east to help pay posse expenses. As they surmounted the edge of a wash near the springs, they stumbled upon Brocius, Pony Deal, Johnny Barnes, Frank Patterson, Milt Hicks, Bill Johnson, Ed Lyle, and Johnny Lyle, cooking a meal alongside the spring. As per Wyatt Earp's account, and an anonymous report submitted to the Tombstone Epitaph, he led the posse as they stumbled upon the Cowboys' camp at the springs from less than 30 feet behind an embankment. The Cowboys initiated gunfire just as Earp dismounted. Initially, they believed they had hit Earp, but it turned out they struck his saddle horn instead. Texas Jack Vermillion, whose horse fell victim to the gunfire, remained composed under the barrage and closely shadowed Wyatt during the ensuing firefight. Doc, Johnson, and McMaster returned fire and sought refuge. Warren Earp was away on an errand at the time. 18 months prior, Wyatt Earp had protected Brocius against a mob ready to lynch him for killing Town Marshal Fred White. Furthermore, he provided testimony that played a pivotal role in sparing Brocius from a murder conviction. Now, Brocius aimed his shotgun at Earp from approximately 50 feet, but missed. In retaliation, Earp returned fire over his horse using a 22-inch 10-gauge shotgun, fatally striking Brocius in the stomach with a blast of buckshot that nearly severed him in two. Brocius collapsed at the water's edge by the spring. The Cowboys unleashed a volley of shots at the Earp party, but the lawmen's fire was so intense that those Cowboys who could left. Bullets punctured both sides of Earp's long coat, with one striking his boot heel and another grazing his saddle horn, scorching the saddle hide and narrowly missing Wyatt. Engaging his pistol, Earp shot Johnny Barnes in the chest and Milt Hicks in the arm. Vermillion tried to retrieve his rifle wedged in the scabbard under his fallen horse, exposing himself to the Cowboys' gunfire. Doc Holliday helped him gain cover. Wyatt Earp had trouble remounting his horse due to a cartridge belt that had slipped down his legs. He was finally able to get on his horse and retreat. McMaster was grazed by a bullet that cut through the straps of his field glasses. Earp biographer John Flood wrote that the Cowboys interred Brocius's remains on Frank Patterson's nearby ranch, located along the Bubba-Comari River. This is close to the original McClory Ranch site about 5 miles west of Fairbank, before the McClorys moved to the Sulphur Springs Valley in late 1880. Brocius's grave site has never been identified. Proof of death. Fred J. Dodge, an undercover agent employed by Wells Fargo and Tombstone, conducted inquiries into Curly Bill's demise. In his account, he mentioned conversing with J.B. Ayers, a saloon proprietor in Charleston, a locale frequented by the outlaws and rustlers. Ayers relayed that individuals present during the encounter had informed him that Curly Bill met his end at the hands of Wyatt Earp. They purportedly removed Brocius's lifeless body that very night, laying him to rest on Patterson's ranch along the Bubba-Comari. The Tombstone Nugget first put up a $1,000 reward for proof Curly Bill lived, and the Tombstone Epitaph countered with a $2,000 reward. Neither was ever collected. It's worth noting that Brocius was not a wanted man in the eyes of Arizona law enforcement, and if he was not dead, had no reason to disappear. Furthermore, returning to Texas, where, according to Wyatt Earp's recollection, he may still have faced murder charges, seemed highly improbable. Other names. Because of his nickname, Curly Bill Brocius has been confused with Curly Bill Graham, a different outlaw of the same geographical region and time period. Graham was killed in a gunfight by Deputy Sheriff James D. Houck on October 17, 1887, and buried in Young, Arizona. and is not considered by historians to be the same Curly Bill of Charleston and Tombstone. Brocius's birth date, birth name, and birthplace are not known. In newspapers of the time, Brocius was known alternately as Curly Bill and Curly Bill. His surname has also been spelled as Brocius, although the former is the spelling used for his mail drop in Arizona Territory, according to one published letter of the time. Origins in Missouri. Historical research into Brocius's death turned up two possible earlier identities. Dennis McLaughlin in the Encyclopedia of the Old West reports that Brocius was from Missouri and named William B. Graham. He said Brocius rode for various Texas cow outfits and was known in Kansas. According to historian Robert M. Utley, Robert Martin was a member of the Jesse Evans gang of outlaws in New Mexico during the mid to late 1870s. Billy the Kid briefly joined this group before going to work for John Tunstall. Evans's gang, a loose-knit consortium of desperados known as the Boys, ended up fighting against the Regulators during the Lincoln County War. Because of the time frame, the location, and his friendship with Martin, Curly Bill Brocius may have been a member of the Evans gang as well.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.